I had always been drawn to the moon. My parents liked to tell me that when I was very young, I made them fraught with worry, after countless escapes into the backyard. They would panic, frantically looking throughout the house for their toddler, before finding me time and time again in the field behind their house, my small chin turned up towards the sky, and a smile gracing my face. They would often joke that the moon was my guardian, watching after me when I ventured outside. By the time I was 7, I knew this to be a whimsical story spun out of my parents' love. I still like to imagine that it was true on nights when I found myself lying back on the grass, hardly feeling the itch on my shoulder blades as I bathed in the moonlight. Over the years, I lost many of my childhood idealizations. I learned what it was like to be slighted by a friend, and the ache of a breakup that made it difficult to breathe. I still trusted people, but I lost that simple acceptance of others that most children have. Yet somehow, I never lost my wonder over the moon. You'd think it would have been a passing fascination. After all, who stays absolutely absorbed in the same object for their entire lives? I'm 25 now, and somehow, every time I caught a glimpse of her, and I was certain that the moon was a her, I would just stop and stare for a moment, caught up in this overwhelming rush of calm that arrested me. I've had friends teasingly call it a crush over the years. Moonstruck, they would claim. Not a thing to be done about it. Truthfully, I would want nothing else. Whenever the stresses of life became intolerable, all I needed to do was sneak into the closest park at night and relax into the cradle of the ground, staring up idly. My favorite was when I managed to catch her as she rose slowly above the horizon, appearing immense against the backdrop of the trees. Lately, I had escaped to the familiar comfort of moon-watching more frequently than ever. An inexorable apathy has been creeping over me these past few weeks. I wouldn't call it sadness, exactly, although I sure wasn't happy. Mostly I just felt nothing at all. As if all my energy had drained away so slowly that I didn't notice how much was gone until I was gasping for the energy to keep breathing. The more plagued I became with fatigue, the more nights I would spend out in the deserted little park behind my apartment building. It was overgrown with weeds and had no amenities to speak of, but it was perfect for the fact that it had a lush patch of grass set towards the back of the lot and infrequent visitors. So I wasn't too concerned when I found myself waking up in the early hours of twilight as the moon just began to set, feeling groggy yet uncurious. I'd been spending more and more of my days asleep as of late, preferring to fall into the absence of thought that unconsciousness provided. It wasn't necessarily that I was stressed. In fact, my life was remarkably quiet at the moment. I had a job that wasn't terrible, a decent social life, and a place to call my own. Overall, it was usually enough to keep me content. Somehow, my thoughts never reflected this. Instead, I could only think over and over again on my failures and what I hadn't yet accomplished. In fact, the only thing that ever really gave me any peace of mind nowadays was being able to stare up at the moon as the nightly chill settled over me and stiffened my limbs. I wasn't surprised that I was falling asleep outside, considering that it was the only comfort that made me feel anything anymore. I didn't start to wonder if maybe something was wrong until I noticed the humming. It took me weeks to become aware of the noise, and I only realized it as it grew. The hum wasn't from a human voice. I wouldn't say it had a distinct sound. Rather, it was a low, thrumming vibration that I could feel slowly building in my extremities. It felt as if I had a second pulse. My own caused by the sluggish crawl of my blood, and a second frequency that beat with a slow, taxing rhythm that I could feel throughout my entire body. It only helped to make me more exhausted, and while I found the sensation odd, I wasn't frightened. Something about being in full sight of the moon made me feel safe. My guardian. I think part of me wanted to worry, but it was as if I had lost the ability to move and think while lying beneath her light. It wasn't until I noticed part of me fading away in the daytime that I began to grow concerned. I had assumed that the increased fatigue and indifference was a sign of my deepening depression, but now I had a nagging feeling that it was something else entirely. I had never heard of depression causing someone's skin to pick up a barely discernible translucent quality. It only made me appear drawn and tired in certain lights. However, when I tilted my arm just right, I could have sworn that for a moment I saw right through it to the ground. It was so brief that I would have believed it to be an illusion induced by my exhaustion, if not for the odd, colorless cast taking over my skin. My friends tried to claim that it was hardly noticeable, and clearly due to my ill health. After all, someone who spent all of their time in the moonlight, with a poor diet nonetheless, wasn't going to be the picture of glowing health. It was true that, over time, I had begun to eat less and less. Most days I could hardly remember to do it just the once. I was hesitant to talk about what I was experiencing, much as I never mentioned feeling as if the moon was watching over me. I was cautious to approach the subject of vanishing. Even writing this down was easier said than done, but I need to have someone else, anybody else, know what's happening to me. You see, I've been spending less and less time outside during the day. Almost none at all, frankly. Luckily, I'm able to field my loved ones with semi-regular texts and the occasional call, although people are having some difficulty hearing me nowadays. Every night, I find myself in a deserted park. It's almost a compulsion now. The patch of grass seems to call to me, and the vibrations start as soon as I lay down. They don't disturb me anymore, although a week ago I had been uneasy. Now it doesn't seem so significant. Ultimately, I know the moon will watch out for me as she always has. The constant, crooning thrum builds in my body until it feels as if I'm floating. Some nights, I swear I seem closer to the waning moon, an experience that is both intense yet comforting. As the vibrations would overtake me, the moon would pulsate with a beautiful light. I don't think I can go outside anymore when the sun is out. When I look in the mirror, it's almost impossible to say if I'm looking at myself, or at the wall behind me. I can see my outline more clearly as it gets closer to sunset, though. I almost appear solid in some instances. This morning, my hand passed through the doorknob as I attempted to unlock my front door, after waking up in the park again. I spent most of the day asleep, but in my periods of clarity I considered my circumstances. I am afraid, but this feels like a continuation, an unavoidable path. I'm taking the opportunity to talk about the events that have been bearing down on me these past few weeks. Conceivably, for my entire life if my parents are to be believed, on how I would gaze expectantly upwards ever since I was a child. I still find myself staring up at the moon, although I don't have the energy to smile anymore. I've discovered that I'm at my best just as the sun begins to set. I can feel the urge to go outside starting to pull my concentration, but I'm free from some of the crushing weariness I feel during the day. I don't think I'll be coming back from the park tonight. Something about the way my hands are beginning to sink softly into the keyboard, the vibrations that I'm starting to feel even now while inside my building, tells me that the time is drawing closer. If I focus, I'm able to finish my story. I just wanted everyone to know that I accept this, and I suspect I won't be as gone as I might seem. I think you'll see me much more often than you would expect, although I don't presume that I'll be recognizable. I understand now that my energy was only ever borrowed, my life a gift, but one that had to be returned. The need to go outside and find my soft patch of grass is too strong now. I'm sorry I couldn't say more. If my family is reading this, I love you, and I'm sorry. I was always meant to go home.